Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Glad to have with us on this Monday morning State Senator Tom O'Mara. Senator O'Mara, thanks for phoning in.
Good morning, Brian. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, Senator O'Mara, you were not too pleased about a lot of things in the budget. Let me play a little audio here of the floor speech you gave in the state Senate.
There's a new opioid tax for people that are in pain and are on legitimate opioid prescriptions that are suffering, that are going to pay more for them to get relief. These are our constituents. $100 million from individuals suffering in New York State. Yet, out of that $100 million new opioid tax, we have no additional spending on our opioid and heroin crisis that is beleaguering the state of New York and every state in this country and the nation.
Senator O'Mara, the list just goes on and on of the complaints coming actually from both sides on the budget.
Yeah, there's complaints all around. There's $1 billion in new taxes in this budget, and basically nothing for upstate New York, nothing to help our slow economy, nothing to help create jobs. It's just a new tax and spend budget from the new Senate Democrat majority, which is one of the three leaders making up this budget. Their extreme liberal, regressive New York City agenda is just going to continue to stifle our progress in upstate New York.
Livingston County Sheriff Tom Doherty put out a message on Twitter where Sheriff Doherty said he was very concerned about the bail reform. Now, the three things that Sheriff Doherty noted about bail reform was that anyone accused of second-degree robbery or second-degree burglary or selling heroin, it would be like a catch and release kind of thing where they would not be held on bail for those accusations. What did you make of that?
Well, his comments are right on. It's a terrible policy that the extreme liberal groups that are running Albany now have been trying to do for years, and that is taking away the discretion of bail to our criminal court judges. Criminals charged or individuals charged with those crimes that you just mentioned and many other, every misdemeanor that's not a sex offense and most E-level felonies, judges cannot set bail. It is ridiculous. This was done with little to no input from the New York State District Attorneys Association, our sheriffs, our police chiefs, law enforcement across the state. This is it's just something that's really inexplicable to have done. The District Attorneys Association put a blistering statement out the afternoon that the budget was being passed, arguing against this, calling it bad policy, saying it's going to hurt the communities that are the exact communities that these extreme liberals are they're trying to protect. It's going to hurt these communities, and it's going to take away a very valuable tool. And when you get somebody that's going to be charged with those serious crimes and be given a desk appearance ticket, virtually the same thing as a speeding ticket you get in your when you get pulled over on the highway, saying come back to court on this date. We're going to see many criminal defendants abscond, not return. There's nothing if an individual is from out of state, from out of the country. They're just given a ticket and say come back in a few weeks and show up in court. So it's really bad.
Senator O'Mara, one person who's been very, and I was kind of surprised about this, one person who's been very outspoken about the budget was the district attorney in the state capital area, Albany County area, District Attorney David Soares, perplexed that the media was no longer going to be getting mugshots of suspects, and the suspects were no longer going to be held for certain crimes. This is audio from NPR's Capitol Press Room with David Soares.
On the bail issue, they're saying that judges aren't qualified and shouldn't have discretion. But on the issue of protecting victims' names and identification, that we're going to give judges the discretion to provide a protective order on the discovery issue. You cannot have it both ways. If judges are unqualified to make decisions about bail, they should just be unqualified to make decisions about discovery. But what we're doing here is we're trying to create a very convenient scheme that on both ends does not favor victims of crime, witnesses to crimes, and the public at large.
State Senator Tom O'Mara, you're a former DA yourself. Your thoughts?
I agree with District Attorney Soares completely on this. And there are often times when I don't agree with David on some of the policies, but he's speaking this year in his capacity of as president of the New York State District Attorneys Association, an organization that I was a member of and active in when I was a district attorney. And David Soares, the Albany County District Attorney, is a Democrat, and he is the one that issued that scathing statement in opposition to these criminal justice reforms that I mentioned earlier. And we have had other Democrat district attorneys in the Capitol at press conferences with us throughout this process, arguing against these changes. He's right on point with taking away the discretion on bail for these judges, yet giving them discretion to order certain discovery to benefit criminal defendants. And nobody is arguing against discovery for criminal defendants. And the District Attorneys Association has been very willing to work on changes to improve the discovery system for criminal defendants, because they should be given every opportunity to get fair, reasonable disclosure to defend themselves. The district attorneys agree with that. I agree with that. Yet the onerous discovery changes that were rammed through in this budget, in addition to no bail, as I mentioned before, the discovery now has to be provided within 15 days of arraignment, which is extremely fast under any scenario, given what district attorneys are required to provide and the ability of them to just be able to get that information together, get it organized, and get it in a form that can be provided directly to the defense attorneys. Really, this budget went so far on criminal justice reforms to protect and coddle criminals in this state. It's not going to be a deterrent to crime in this state. And this budget went a long ways towards expanding access to state resources and protections for illegal immigrants who are in this country. This was really a criminal's dream in this budget as far as what was passed and what was put through, and making it even more difficult to deal with not just crime issues in the state, but the issues of illegal immigration, which we have significant impacts from in New York State as well.
Talking with State Senator Tom O'Mara. Now, last Monday when we had Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on, we asked Palmisano, they always talked about the 3 men in a room process. Palmisano, meaning that it was the legislative leaders and the governor who worked everything out and everybody else is cut out of the process. Palmisano maintains that process of the 3 men in a room is actually worse than it was before.
Well, it's worse than it was before, because you have no diversity in the representation in that room. It's 3 Democrats, all similarly minded, not necessarily in lockstep, but the more conservative side or Republican side is not being heard in that room. And and I've said over the years, well, 3 men in a room sounds like horrible policy, and it really is. There should be more open discussions in the budget process. That's one of the things that's been lacking, is a real open discourse of what's going on. But let me tell you, though, from my experience of having been in the majority in the New York State Senate, our leader would go to these 3 men in a room meetings and come back, update our conference on what's going on. We would conference about those issues and give our leader direction on where to try to move things in the discussions, because they necessarily can't. You're not going to come to a solution with 213 legislators sitting in a room arguing back and forth and debating what to do. So that naturally gets refined to our leaders representing us in these things. But now you have no diversity of leadership in these discussions, and it just made for a totally lopsided budget as it comes to the liberal regressive policy in this state, which is only going to hurt us upstate. It's only going to stifle our economy and make job creation even more difficult in upstate New York. There's, as I said, $1 billion in new taxes in this. No new tax savings for the middle class in this state, and really nothing done at all to foster job creation and improving our economy. So it's really it's a bad situation that the governor has always had extreme power in making up the budget. A lot of controls in that, and now we're seeing the Democrat majorities complaining about that. But really, the Democrat majorities in this process ceded whatever leverage and negotiating abilities they had by not coming up with agreed-upon budget bills before the time that it required a message of necessity from the governor to get the budget done on time, and that is to get the governor to issue a message saying you don't have to wait for the 3-day waiting period to have these bills really viewed and vetted by the public during that period. So as soon as they pass that deadline where you need a message from the governor, that's 3 days out from when the budget is due, the leaders lost all negotiating ability whatsoever, and the governor was able to put whatever he wanted in that budget. And in this particular year, that's even more onerous because of a pending pay raise for the legislature of a $10,000 increase in salary to every legislator, but only if the budget was done timely. So that took away, by getting into that 3-day, passing that 3-day window, took away any ability of these leaders, the Democrat leaders of the Senate and the Assembly, to have any negotiating ability whatsoever with this governor. And let me tell you, Governor Cuomo took full advantage of that. He saw that coming. They delayed, they were dilatory, and once that deadline was passed, he had complete control of this budget process.
Did you vote for Governor Cuomo to get a pay raise?
I did not. I voted no. That's one of the most obnoxious things that was thrown in at the 11th hour in this budget. The governor actually threatened to withhold the messages of necessity on the last couple of budget bills that were needed unless he got his resolution for his pay raise passed by the legislature in the middle of the night. Just extremely obnoxious to have done that. I voted no on that resolution.
Talking to State Senator Tom O'Mara, what else stands out to you about this year's budget, Senator?
The only positive thing that came out of the budget was the permanent extension of the 2% property tax cap. Excuse me, I always say 2%. It's not a 2% property tax cap. But we extended a permanent property tax cap that property taxes can't exceed a 2% growth or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower, in a given year. And that has helped stem the growth of property taxes across New York State. Beyond that, there is absolutely nothing in this budget. As if passing a pay commission a year ago in the state budget and seeing the governor intervene in that and have that commission overstep its bounds and really creating a full-time legislature and putting in these staggered pay raises requiring the legislature to bow to his demands in the budget process to get the next step of their raise is really coercive. But this legislature, having seen how that went for the legislature last year, created 2 new commissions to divest itself of its own power and decision-making that it should be doing. One with regard to congestion pricing of New York City that will raise fees on every vehicle entering Manhattan under 61st Street to help support the MTA. But even worse, ceding to a commission whole-scale changes to our election system, including establishing a publicly taxpayer-funded campaign finance system that this commission will be charged with coming up with how that's going to be set up. And that's expected to cost New York State taxpayers in excess of $200 million for every state election. So every other year, when the state legislature is up for re-election, when statewide offices are up for election every 4 years, these elections are going to be aided in taxpayer funds going to help candidates run their campaigns. And this legislature voted to approve a commission to do that rather than making the hard choice of coming up with how to do it again. And on the congestion pricing, those New Yorker legislators that are from the city or from the suburbs around the city where their constituents are going to be driving into the city, into that congestion zone of New York City below 61st Street, an unknown fee or a cost to those commuters. It's really it's a commuter tax that will the amount of which is ceded to this authority and how that's going to be applied to these commuters. I think that is going to be devastating to those legislators from those areas just outside that region that's going to impose this commuter tax. I think it's going to be very harmful to their constituencies and likely to their reelection possibilities.
Going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation, especially on the topic of illegals or undocumented, whatever you want to call them. Stay with us.
You don't have to travel far for the highest quality imaging services. St. James has you covered. We have a full range of services, including X-ray at 2 convenient locations: mammography, ultrasound, MRI, bone density, echocardiogram, stress echo, and nuclear medicine. Quick appointments, friendly service, great technology, Gold Seal accreditation, and the backing of the University of Rochester imaging experts. So the next time your doctor orders an imaging test, choose St. James Hospital. Learn more at stjames.urmc.edu/imaging.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. Rob, a little bit warmer out there this morning.
Yeah, it certainly is, Brian. In fact, it's very warm out there this morning, and since I didn't get a chance last week, let me wish you a belated happy birthday. For the listeners out there, Brian celebrated a birthday. I won't see which one, but most of us don't have clothes that old. Otherwise, this morning, Brian, we've got mild temperatures in central and western New York. We're up into the 60s, and it's snowing across northern New England. We've got a cold front kind of jammed in between. Right now, Saranac Lake is 37, while I'm looking at a 61 at Danville, and Dansville is going to be one of the warm spots today, probably up around 65, 66 degrees later this afternoon. There are probably going to be some spots in the area that actually get above 70, so pretty remarkable what's going on. But by the middle of the work week, the cool air to the north is going to get a chance to move in. Today, lots of clouds, breezy. May see a shower or two out there this morning. Temperatures 70 to 75. Sunrise this morning was at 6:40. It'll set tonight at 7:44. Clouds tonight were 45 to 50. Clouds tomorrow, the chance for some showers, cooler, 55 to 60 tomorrow afternoon. Showers may end as wet snowflakes tomorrow night, 30 to 35. It'll turn partly sunny, breezy, and cool for Wednesday. Temperatures 45 to 50.
Back with State Senator Tom O'Mara on the Newsmaker show here on a Monday morning. Senator, college tuition.
I voted against it. the state legislature earlier in the year voted to pass the DREAM Act, which passed both houses of the legislature back in late January or early February. I forget which date it was this year, which affords free college tuition, tuition assistance to illegal immigrants, the so-called DREAM Act. That was passed by both houses early in the year, but yet Governor Cuomo required the legislature to again vote for that in this year's budget, which was just passed last week. And that opens up millions and millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, to help provide tuition assistance up to and including free college tuition at state universities for illegal immigrants or undocumented aliens, whichever way you want to call them, that are here illegally. And that limits thereby the amount of funds and tuition assistance dollars that are available for our New York State citizens who should first and foremost be eligible for this type of tuition assistance.